Good evening, everyone. It's officially 6 o'clock, and so I will call this month's meeting of the July 26, 2022 meeting of the City of San Diego's Commission on Police Practices to order. The next item up is roll call. Charmaine?
Sorry, I was muted. Chair Hilbert.
I'm here.
First Vice Chair Case.
Present.
Commissioner Anderson.
Here.
Commissioner Dent.
Here.
Commissioner Harrington. Kevin.
Here, sorry, here.
Okay. Commissioner Smith.
Here.
Commissioner Clark. Alina, can you text her to see if she's joining us, please? Thank you.
Yes.
Commissioner Shea.
Present.
Commissioner Bond.
Present.
Commissioner Dabba Griffin.
I'm here.
Commissioner Spruce.
Here.
Commissioner Pink. He's not here yet. Mark him down as excused. Who do we have from Internal Affairs?
Hi, good evening, everybody. It's Lieutenant Dan Siason.
No.
And also Lieutenant Schmalak should be here. And Chief McGrath, he's currently in a meeting. He'll be joining us a little later.
Okay.
I actually see him logged in as well, but he's on mute, so he might be just listening in for right now.
Okay. We also have our outside counsel, Dwayne Bennett, and HR manager, Liz Barat, as well. That completes roll call.
All right, thank you. The next item up is the adoption of the resolution authorizing and ratifying the continuance of teleconference public meetings pursuant to Government Code 54-953. So the motion is the Commission on Police Practices will adopt this resolution authorizing and ratifying the use of teleconferencing for all meetings, including meeting of its ad hoc and standing committee in accordance with Government Section Code 54-953E and all other applicable provisions under the Brown Act for a period of 30 days from the adoption of this resolution or such time that the Commission adopts a subsequent resolution in accordance with Government Code 54-953E. The interim executive director is directed to return no later than 30 days after the adoption of this resolution with an item for this legislative body's reconsideration of these findings. May I get someone to make the motion? Well, I guess, you know what, I'll make the motion since I just read it. Can I get a second on that? Thank you. And Charmaine, can you call a vote, please?
Who's seconding the motion?
That's Nancy.
Noted. First Vice Chair Case.
Yes.
Commissioner Bond.
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson.
Yes.
Commissioner Dent.
Yes.
Commissioner Spruce.
Yes.
Commissioner Harrington.
Yes.
Commissioner Shea.
Yes.
Commissioner Dabba Griffin.
Yes.
Commissioner Smith.
Yes.
And Chair Hilbert.
I'll vote yes.
Motion passes. The vote is 10-0-0.
All right, thank you. And now it's going into public comment. I know we had a member of the public who submitted a public comment online, but I see that they're also here in the meeting. So I think that they will probably want to do their public comment verbally. So with that, I see two hands currently raised. First one is Layla. Should be able to go ahead and unmute yourself. You have 2 minutes.
Hi, yes. My name is Layla Aziz, and I'm with Pillars of the Community. Today, I did 3 complaints to Internal Affairs with the police department, and 2 of them were for, actually all 3 had illegal search and seizure issues in them. 2 of them were African-American juvenile boys. And it really concerns me because right now, as we implement an ordinance, we have a lot of pain going on in the community. And so I'm going to request that we don't leave the community out of any decision-making that's going on, particularly those of us who are on the ground daily, adamantly fighting for the rights of all community members, regardless of gender, race, or anything else, sexual preference. And when the community is left out, mistakes are made, the lived experiences are forgotten. And I think that's very important, particularly with the commission that has lost so many members. So I'm asking that we look at what we're doing with the actual hiring practices. I was part of the hiring committee. That was exciting for us to be a part of something like that with you all to make a collective decision. And it scares me that any of that will be changed. I'm also afraid of how we're going to look at budgeting, staffing. And some of you guys have actually had to implement programs. So I know you have the expertise to look at the long range goals of what it is that we want. And are we going to bifurcate a deputy director and an outreach person and lose possibly an investigator? So let's look at those decisions. Let's look at the strategy behind what we're doing and the fairness and the voice of the community that overwhelmingly voted for this Measure B. I want to thank you all for your time, your dedication. And I know it's a lot what you do, and I just want to applaud you all. And I really hope that you listen to the community on this one, because most of you, all of you, are a part of this. Thank you so much and have a great day.
Thank you. Second public comment is Abraham.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can.
Yes, sir. Hi, my name is Abraham and I live in Southeast San Diego. I have been pulled over and illegally searched by police because I'm a young Black man. I'm an excellent student and I have never been in trouble. The police commission needs to get up and running to stop the blatant discrimination which has happened to me multiple times. I'm working with pillars of the community and have filed a complaint with Internal Affairs and the commission. We need the staff hired and policies made so we can have oversight of the police. At the end of the day, the police work in this community and we live in it. So I strongly believe we have to make that happen. On that note, I wanted to ask if there were any programs that are working towards bridging the gap between teenagers of color living in the Southeast and the San Diego Police Department.
Okay, so for public comment, it's really just making comments. It's really not necessarily a question and answer period, but we can kind of get to some of that a little bit later. And I know we have had some outreach related efforts that Patrick can talk about a little bit later in the meeting as well.
Yes, sir. Sounds good.
Thank you. Kate, I see you're an attendee and I know you had public comment you had submitted. Do you want to make your comment now? And if not, I can wait for you to raise your hand and I can go to Doug, who has public comment.
Okay, thank you. Most of the time, those who speak during public comment at commission meetings are making a complaint about how officers handled a particular incident. My comment tonight is different. 2 Saturdays ago, San Diego held its annual LGBTQ Pride Parade, one of the largest pride parades in the nation with over 300,000 participants and spectators. This year, given the disturbing incidents that have happened across the country, authorities were on high alert. In June, police arrested over 30 armed members of the white nationalist group Patriot Front, who were on their way to violently disrupt a pride event in Indiana. And as we all know, in Highland Park, Chicago, a gunman killed and wounded dozens at a 4th of July parade. I don't know if any credible threats were made related to this year's San Diego Pride, but I do know that the police were well prepared for any possibility. As I arrived early along the parade route, when the crowds were just starting to gather, I observed dozens of officers from multiple agencies across the county staging for their assignments. They included both uniformed and plainclothes officers, and some were snipers on rooftops. It was a far greater law enforcement presence than in prior years. The general public will never know the extent of the operation, especially since everything was peaceful. I want the department to know that their efforts did not go unnoticed, and I know I speak for many in expressing my gratitude for keeping us safe. This year, there was a large law enforcement contingent in the parade, including several openly LGBTQ officers, and they received loud ovations throughout the route. There were also a few protesters in the parade, including one wearing a giant uniform pig costume with the sign that read, "No Cops in Pride." As a longtime activist, I am aware of the troubled history or troubled relationship between the police and the LGBTQ community. After all, Stonewall was a rebellion against police harassment and brutality. Times have changed and things have improved, although they are far from being perfect. And I do understand the sentiment that the community should stand in solidarity with those protesting police abuses today, especially against the BIPOC community. Nevertheless, I, for one, am glad that this year there were cops at Pride. Thank you.
Thanks, Doug. And then Kate, did you want to speak? If not, we can read 2 minutes worth of your letter.
Yes, I would ask that you read the letter. I don't have access to it
Okay.
from my home computer. Thank you.
Sure. Alina, can you read? And I'll do the timer for 2 minutes.
Yes, sorry if it takes me more than 2 minutes, but I'll go fast. I'll try. Let's see. So, Women Occupy San Diego is providing this statement to the interim CPP based on our concern about recent actions of the CPP that have resulted in a significant violation of community trust. These actions involve the vote at the hastily called special meeting held on July 12th, at which a majority of the CPP voted to establish two positions, that of Deputy Executive Director and that of Community Engagement Coordinator. This vote resulted in the termination of the process to hire the Deputy Executive Director, Community Engagement Coordinator, which had been ongoing for months and was near completion. Here is the background. The Interim Transition Committee of the CPP has been working for more than 1 year now on various interim issues, including that of staff for the CPP. The committee spent hours and hours on discussing the position of the Community Engagement Coordinator, and it was included in the city budget that was just approved. The job description was drafted and a search firm was engaged. An entire process of recruitment, screening, interviews, including a community panel, was adopted. All of this work was approved by the interim CPP and the process was started. Commissioner and Community Outreach Chair Patrick Anderson convened a community panel consisting of representatives from 9 community organizations that are involved in social justice work. A national search was conducted and 79 applications were received. The initial screening was done by the search firm based primarily on the credentials of the applicants and how they met the requirements of the job description. A group of 15 to 20 were selected and further screened by the commissioners on the transition committee. Patrick scheduled the orientation for the community panel for Friday, July 1st. The night before that meeting, Patrick received an email from Charmaine putting a hold on the process. It is not clear to us how she had the authority to do that, but Patrick informed the community panel the next day of that email. The community panel was very angry and felt disrespected. The commissioners on the transition committee met with Charmaine on July 8th. Charmaine explained her reasoning for pausing the search. 2 commissioners voted to agree with Charmaine. 2 commissioners voted to continue with the process. In light of the vote, the matter was forwarded to the full commission for a special meeting, which was scheduled for July 12th. At the July 8th meeting, Patrick requested a meeting between Charmaine and the community panel. Charmaine initially suggested that it should happen later in the process, but eventually agreed to schedule a meeting for Monday, July 11th. At the July 11th meeting with the community panel, Charmaine explained her reasoning for halting the process, but the community panel continued to feel that this was unacceptable. The special meeting of the interim CPP.
Sorry, Alina, just to, we're way over the 2 minutes, and just to make public
really
comment
long,
to say
I
for everybody, I actually let it go to 3, so I'm going to have to stop you there. But for all the members of the commission, the statement I think was submitted online, so it will be part of the official record. Her whole statement. It's like 7 or 8 paragraphs. Yeah. Is there any other public comment? Okay, not seeing any. Moving on to the next item on the agenda, which would have been our closed session that was canceled because we didn't have cases ready for review. So the purpose of the Commission on Police Practices is the next item, and I will quickly read that. The purpose of the Commission on Police Practices is to provide an independent investigation of officer-involved shootings and custody deaths, and an unbiased evaluation of all complaints against the San Diego Police Department and its personnel in a process that will be transparent and accountable to the community. The Commission will also review and evaluate SDPD policies, practices, training, and protocols, and represent the community in making recommendations for changes. The mission of the Commission is to hold law enforcement accountable to the community and to increase community trust in law enforcement, resulting in increased safety for both the community and law enforcement. And next up, we have approval of our meeting minutes. We have 4 meeting minutes. Unless anyone has an objection, I'm thinking it probably is most efficient and expedient for us to do a vote on all 4 at the same time, unless people have any edits or revisions they would like to make to any of the minutes.
Brandon, I'd just like to point out there are a couple of participants who've been trying to raise their hands while public comment was still going on, and their hands have come up and gone back down. I think they did want to speak. They just were having issues raising their hands.
Okay, move back over.
It was Lachelle.
Okay, I see
Coleman,
Lachelle.
and Evie was also flashing off and on.
Okay, Lachelle, go ahead. You have 2 minutes. Lachelle, you should be able to unmute yourself. Okay, and then Evie.
Can you hear me now?
Yep, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Mrs. Coleman, and I'm reaching out on behalf of our community, Commissioner Community Leads to be up and running. Last night, my son was detained and only the dark-skinned boys were handcuffed. The light-skinned boys were looked white and was not. Also, the police told my juvenile son that they were bringing the dogs in, and if he moved, they would bite him and shoot them, and the police would shoot them as well. Our children are being traumatized and unfairly treated, and I'm working with my church, the Harvey Foundation and Pillars of the Community. We are along that this process is not held, and community is able to help pick the staff. Here is basically, I just want to ensure that we are at least educating the youth here. Last night they let us know that there were shootings in this area, that kind of thing. Due to COVID, I didn't even let my teenager out. This night just so happened to be a birthday party they were going to be attending. But just being able to be aware of what's happening in the community, so these kids who are good kids, who just graduated, who are going to college, who are African American and minorities, they are able to be educated so they're safe.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Coleman. Evie, did you want to raise your hand still?
There we go. Okay. All right. I'm unmuted now. Thank you.
Okay, yep, go ahead.
Yeah, I've been trying to figure out why I've been really feeling so badly about how this has been going. And I've come up with this kind of thinking. The interim committee and the interim executive director are exactly that. They are interim. The executive director was appointed by the mayor a while back when she came. So she's not really anywhere near the kind of executive director that this group expects to see happen. It would be somebody that the community has a lot to say about who that's going to be, and the commissioners, the new commissioners. The interim people are interim. We need to realize that. The transition committee is just that. They're enabling transition. And I believe the members were trying to incorporate what they felt were some best practices that would come up to be part of the new commission. And so I'm concerned that the CRB people, the holdovers from CRB, including the director, should not be making major decisions regarding how the commission should operate, especially overturning a transition process concerning community involvement and hiring that was put together and approved by the actual interim group to go ahead and done excellently and with a lot of knowledge on how these things happen by someone on that transition committee. And he was totally disregarded because the interim executive director had a better idea. Now, if Charlene needs help because she's overworked, that's not what a new deputy director should be hired for. The city council should be responsible for providing that assistance. as they should be for providing members to help with reviewing the cases that the board so sorely needs and has asked for, and they've been ignored.
Okay, thanks. Your 2 minutes is up. All right, moving back over to the approval of the meeting minutes. We have the June 28th, which is our standard full month open meeting. And then we have the July 5th, which was our report out from closed session. We also have the July 19th, which is a report out from closed session. And then we have our special meeting of July 12th. Does anyone have any edits to any of those meeting minutes?
Brandon, I'll move to approve all four.
Okay, perfect. I was going to say, not seeing any hands raised. We're going to go for a motion to approve all of them. We have a motion by Nancy. Can we get a second, please? Was that Kevin?
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. Charmaine, can you call a vote, please?
Vice Chair Case,
Yes.
Commissioner Vaughn,
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson,
Yes.
Commissioner Dent,
Yes.
Commissioner Spruce,
Yes.
Commissioner Harrington,
Yes.
Commissioner Shea,
Yes.
Commissioner Darby Griffin,
Yes.
Commissioner Smith,
Yes.
Commissioner Clark,
Yes.
and Chair Hilbert.
I'll vote yes.
Motion passes 11-0-0.
Okay. All right. And then moving on to non-agenda public comment. So if anyone has public comment on any specific item that's on our agenda today, before we go into that, if I see a hand up, I'll go ahead and call on you. But this will be non-agenda public comment. And I see Evie has her hand up. So give me 1 second. All right. You should be able to unmute yourself.
I thought that what I was doing before was the non-agenda public comment, so I will continue a little bit on what I was talking about, if that's all right.
Actually, I would say it's not. It's one topic. So I think, what you said for the last 2 minutes, I think covers here. Thanks. And I don't see, I do see.
There is a topic, which is 9, I guess, where this other stuff comes up again.
Well, the educational training is really, it's kind of that. It's really about the hiring practices and how we do hiring, not necessarily the roles.
Where does some more discussion around this issue come up?
Well, that's what non-agenda public comment would be. But you already kind of did your non-agenda public comment 2 minutes ago. That's why I was saying it's kind of done.
So there's no more talk about it tonight. There's no discussion time. There's no discussion time to go on about what's been happening?
Well, you actually had your discussion time. You had your public comment period, which was 2 minutes.
Yeah, that's not discussion. That's the problem. It's
But
a statement people can hear and go in one ear and out the other.
right, but public comment is just that. It's a period for public comment, and it's not supposed to be debatable.
Right, I understand that. When there is something on the agenda, there's usually a bit more discussion.
Okay, but even then, that would still be public
Okay,
comment. So I'm going to move on.
nothing else.
I'm going to move on to Layla because she has her hand
All
up.
right.
Okay, Layla, yeah, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Hello, everyone. I just wanted to let you guys know that the people who did comment were 2 different instances that were just reported today. We have a base of hundreds of people who have been elected. And just looking at this, that maybe one of the things is we need to have more people really contact you guys and let you guys know what has been going on so you can hear their voices and can really hear on the ground. Or I even invite any commissioner to come out with us on Tuesdays and Thursdays to some of the locations that are definitely racially profiled, even though there's no discrimination findings, and see what's going on. I invite any of you to do that. My email address is laila@potcsd.org. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right, and I don't see any other hands up for non-agenda public comment. So with that, we will be moving on into our educational training. So first up, we have Liz Barat. She's the HR manager with the city of San Diego. She's going to be talking about the city's overall hiring practices and rules and the process. So with that, I will pass that over to Liz.
All right. Thanks so much, Brandon. Good evening, everybody. And thank you so much for inviting me to give a presentation at your meeting tonight. I have a couple of topics I'll be going over in the next few minutes. A little bit about myself. I'm a human resources manager in the city, and some of the recruitments that I've worked on in the past couple of years include our current chief operating officer recruitment, the chief of race and equity that was recently hired about a year ago, the child and youth success manager, the independent budget analyst, the planning director, the human resources director, and the current police chief and fire chiefs. So I've had a few times to dabble in recruitment, working with executive recruiters and becoming familiar with the hiring process. And then I also manage our citywide learning and training across the city. So that's my other fun stuff. So I just wanted to highlight some of the recruitments I've worked on that had a lot of community involvement and community participation. A real quick overview of the city as an organization. We have nearly 12,000 employees across a broad range of functions and a very complex structure. You know, we have all the branches of government, right? Our legislative function of the council. We have a strong mayor form of government, meaning our mayor is basically our chief executive, so to speak. And then we have the independent departments that are kind of the check and balance to the strong mayor's authority, right? So me and HR, we report up under the mayor's purview. So we're under his authority and direction and serve at his pleasure. The independent departments, such as the Office of the Commission that will be created, will be independent and reporting to council. So it's a different reporting structure. Another reporting structure we have is through personnel. I wanted to spend a couple minutes talking a little bit about that. So we have the personnel department is overseen by the Civil Service Commission. So just like this Office of the Commission on Police Practices will be overseen by the commission, same with the personnel department, that's overseen by a Civil Service Commission. And the way our employment structure is set up is that of our nearly 12,000 employee workforce, like 90% of that, like I want to say 10,000 employees, fall under the civil service purview of the classified service, and they're represented by one of 6 different unions. We have like MEA, POA, the local 911, and so on. We have 6 different unions, and that's all again under personnel's purview. So personnel department handles all of the hiring, all of the interview process, and any kind of discipline is also overseen by the Civil Service Commission. In contrast, our Human Resources Department, falling under the mayor, handles all the unclassified hiring. So we have the 2 different groups of employees because the unclassified employees are the managerial roles. They serve at will. They can be terminated in 1 day notice, with no notice, and there's no severance. And so any of the managerial roles in the unclassified, they're exempt, salaried, and are, again, you serve at the pleasure of the mayor, or in the independent departments at the pleasure of the appointing authority. I'm throwing around a lot of terms and I know it's a lot of jargon, but appointing authorities in city lingo means someone who's designated as a hiring manager, basically with the authority to hire or fire individuals. So if you're an unclassified employee, you can be fired on the spot. You can also be hired on the spot too. There's a lot more of that flexibility, and you're a salaried employee. So these new positions in this department, the first ones being filled are those unclassified roles. In contrast, the classified positions, those ones, you can't just fire someone. These are the classic, like, oh, it takes forever to get fired at the city, because the reason why, you have to go through the unions. Typically there's an appeal process, and you can go and appeal any disciplinary actions at the Civil Service Commission. So it's kind of these 2 different branches. Normally there's most organizations, you just have HR. There's not like HR personnel, for the city, we're different like that, right? All right, so let's see here. So a lot of these new positions in this new department are these unclassified roles. In order to we have a system set up to even obtain a position number, so you can fill the position in the system. In order to do that, Charmaine as the appointing, Charmaine's the appointing authority for this commission. And I know Charmaine reports to the commission, but she's also the paid exempt employee who is appointing all of the positions in this department. So Charmaine had to request exemption from civil service, the managerial positions for this department that the commission approved. So she did that for all of these different positions, right? So we have the deputy executive director and any of the other unclassified positions. So after civil service, they meet monthly, similar probably to this commission. They exempt the position, then they also have to go to council. City council also must approve it, and they provide an ordinance number. I know it's like blah, 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 so much bureaucracy, right? Nothing can happen fast. It takes up to like 2 or 3 months just to even get started, and you haven't even begun to recruit yet, right? So it's a pretty lengthy process. And this is a faster one, actually. So let's see, after council has approved, now you can begin the recruitment process and developing the recruitment bulletin. You can draft it. There needs to be, if the position has never been created, a salary study needs to occur. And HR usually assists with that. We do benchmarking of other similar positions within the city and outside to make it a competitive salary range. Yeah. So another part is the appointing authority or hiring manager may wish to solicit community input in the development of the recruitment bulletin. So in past recruitments that I've worked on, like planning director, police chief, independent budget analyst, and these recruitments as well, we've requested community input in the development of the recruitment bulletin, and the community would provide input on things like the qualities and characteristics of the ideal candidate, what kind of screening criteria that candidates should be evaluated against, and also in some instances, what the top priorities of the position should be, especially for an externally facing, heavily community engagement position. That's a really integral part of shaping the work of these kinds of positions. And this can be gathered in a combination of surveys or community forums or meetings or both types of formats. Then the recruitment bulletin is posted typically for at least 4 weeks to get the word out that a position is available. While that's all happening, you can also start working on your interview process. You need to start, the appointing authority is responsible for developing the final screening criteria and determining who will be interviewed. So that's consistent across the city. That's up to the appointing authority to determine. But whoever the appointing, so in this case, it would be Charmaine. She can obtain input from everyone, but ultimately she would make the final selection on them. On what the final screening criteria and who would be interviewed. The appointing authority or their designee is also responsible for doing the reference checks on the final candidates. And yeah, a little bit about the interview panel. The appointing authority is responsible for convening and selecting who would be on the interview panel or panels. In positions such as these, it's sometimes beneficial to have an internal panel of city leadership team members who are familiar with navigating the city bureaucracy and the city organizational stuff, and having a separate community panel who can also evaluate candidates in relation to the community's priorities and needs. The only requirements from the city standpoint for the city panel members are that the person must be at least one level higher than the position that they are selecting candidates from. So I'm a program manager, for example. The next level higher for me would be deputy director. So I could serve as a panel member to select program coordinators, which is below me, but I could not serve on an interview panel to select a deputy director because that's technically one position higher. The other requirement is that the panel members must have subject matter expertise in the area in which they're interviewing candidates. And for community members, that would be in terms of what they're representing from the communities. So in the child and youth success manager position that I helped on that recruitment, we wanted community members who had a lot of experience in child and youth success stuff. like child and youth success career development programs and things like that. Let's see here. What else was I going to say? In the interview questions, finally, so now maybe you've convened your interview panel, you've got to develop the interview questions. And typically, you'll have standardized interview questions for each panel. So the internal panel of city leadership will have a set of questions, and the community panel will have a set of questions. You can solicit input from the community members on what types of questions they would like to ask, and then, but ultimately it would be up to Charmaine or the appointing authority to determine what questions will be asked. To reduce bias, everyone should be asked all the same questions in a particular panel. So if I'm interviewing with the community panel, I should be asked all the same questions as anyone else who's interviewed by the community panel. And then when I go to the internal panel of city leaders, they should ask a different set of the questions, but their questions should remain the same. So each panel asks their own set of questions, but they must remain consistent amongst each candidate. I think I'm saying that right. The point of that is to make sure that each person is being evaluated on the same criteria, again, to help reduce bias. If there's follow-up questions that are added, you have to make sure you're asking them of all candidates. The final rating criteria is developed and approved by the appointing authority. So in this case, it would be Charmaine. And she can be using the rating criteria provided by community members. So she could be, community members can say, hey, we have concurred, these are the rating criteria, but it's up to her to determine if she wants to accept or include that. After all of the interviews are completed, it is okay and appropriate for the panel to deliberate amongst themselves at the conclusion of the interviews. So you can say, you know, hey, Alina, what did you think about the candidates? Here's what I thought. You can have that kind of deliberation, but it's up to each individual to provide their individual rankings to Charmaine. They don't need to come to consensus as a panel. They can discuss and deliberate, but they provide ultimately their own individual rankings to Charmaine. And then at that point, Charmaine takes all of that information and then makes an ultimate decision on who she'd like to move on, either depending on what part of the interview phase, who she'd like to select. And then I guess at that point, you would do your reference checks. You can do reference checks before, but we recommend waiting to the end because sometimes people already are, doing reference checks can reveal that they're job hunting to their current employer, and you want to keep that confidential as long as possible. So I know I'm talking a lot. I would like to open up for questions, but I don't know if that's allowed in the formalities of how the commission works, but that's it in a really high level. I can send you guys our city documents, but trust me, my version just now was way quicker, and I'll send you guys the administrative regulation. It's a joy to read. So I can send it your way if you'd like to review it. But it basically summarizes the main steps I've outlined with you today.
Yeah, I was gonna say, we can open it up to questions. I see a couple hands from the public. Well, I see one now. So I'll do the public first, but again, really it's supposed to be public comment only, but I'll allow a little bit of leeway for some questions, but I don't want to get too much into the weeds. And then I'm going to open it up to any of the commissioners to ask any questions. And the AR document that Liz was referring, it's available on the city's website. So if while we're doing this, I will try to find that, and I can put, well, actually, no, we don't have chat up. Never mind. I can't do that. But it is available on the website, and we can share that through an email. So going to the attendees, Kate, I see your hand up. You should be able to unmute yourself.
Okay, thank you. So after listening to this presentation, it seems to me that the process that the transition committee put together that was approved by the full CPP, and that you, Ms. Barat, were also involved in the transition committee meetings, or at least some of them, follows along with what you were saying. In fact, that the executive director is the ultimate decision maker, that there is community input, that there was input from the commissioners, but that the final decision maker was the interim executive director. So it's still not clear to me. I don't see anywhere in the process that says that all of a sudden the interim executive director can jump in and stop the process because she doesn't like the last 7 finalists, which is what she said in the special meeting. She just didn't like them. I can see that if she, as the final decision maker, she could say, I'm not picking, I don't want any of them. I'm assuming, but it seems to me that the disruption in the process was continued to be inappropriate, that everything the transition committee and the CPP itself put together was appropriate and should have been followed and completed.
Liz, do you want to jump in on that
I
one?
saw you not raising your, saying, yeah, nodding your head that yes, that was the accurate, it was following the process. And I just wanted to confirm that. Thank you.
I'll just jump in and say, I mean, I wasn't part of that process, but my understanding is none of the initial candidates were scored, which is required by the city. And so I think that is an area where we did not follow the process correctly. But Liz, I'll let you answer her questions, and then I don't see any other members from the public, so then we'll go to the commission.
Yeah, I would say that Charmaine can, or whoever is the appointing authority, can halt or pause the process for whatever reason, at whatever stage of the process. It's not uncommon if there's been new information or pertinent or relevant information that might change or shape the direction of the recruitment. And my understanding was finding out that 2 positions were in fact okay and acceptable by personnel. That in that case, then it made more sense to go, wait a minute, it seems like it might be a better fit and a better service to have more positions rather than fewer, was my understanding of it at the time. It was the reason why to consider pausing it for now. Having 2 positions is better than 1, in my opinion. I know I'm not here to provide my personal opinion on that, but I know that having the specialized focus can be beneficial.
Okay, Nancy, I see your hand up. Go ahead.
Thank you. Liz just said exactly what I was hoping to say, only she said it better, of course. That was exactly the thing that I thought made what we did make sense. So thank you, Liz, so much for the wonderful explanation of that fabulous process.
Okay, and then Kevin, I see you wanted to speak.
Yeah, it's a little frustrating to hear this because interim or not, that's who's in that position, right? And decisions have to get made for things to move forward. And when we make comments like, well, this person's an interim only, they shouldn't make big decisions. How did they get a commission moved forward without making big decisions? And if this person who's the executive director, it doesn't matter what mayor put them in charge of that. It's like saying that they're corrupt to whoever puts them in that position. And it's just it's so sad to hear that. And after all the hard work that, she does and all these members on the commission do, I know section 5, I believe it is, of the bylaws or the charter, one of them say that all things should happen without any outside influence. And of course, everyone wants to hear from the community if there's great ideas, but things have to keep moving. And those are the people in the positions to make those decisions. Those are the people that are hired on the books to make those decisions. They're not going to slow down because some people think, well, they're only interim, because you don't know what's going to happen with that. They just have to keep functioning in that role. And that means entirely, not only somewhat. So it's the same for commissioners. We are the community members right now making those decisions and those votes. And I welcome you to join if you want to be the one to be able to make those votes. But we can't do our job and run this, all these committees and all these other things that we have to do while outside 8 groups are trying to manage it from the outside with zero insight on what it is to be on the panel and actually do it all day long. So that's just my opinion, and I had to clarify some of that. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Kevin. Doug, you're up.
Yeah, I had a question, Liz, regarding the scoring process. If we have a executive search consultant who does the initial selection, and reviews all of the applications received and passes along the top candidates to the next committee. Is that consultant required to provide a score for each of the people who applied?
Yeah, well, the answer is it's I wouldn't say, I don't know if it's required, but it's more that they do provide us a summary usually of all the candidates who met minimum qualifications. So they're screening out those who are, if they don't meet minimum qualifications, they get screened out. So they're looking for the top best candidates and screening out those with minimum qualifications. So whatever those happen to be, which I'm kind of fuzzy on actually for these positions. If it was, I remember there was going back and forth on bachelor's degree. I don't remember if that ended up getting put in there or not, but things like that. So like, do they have their bachelor's degree? If not, they get screened out and so on. So we can request it. I don't know if it's written formally into the proposal for that initial screening, but it usually is taken care of. He uses the criteria that was already provided to him.
Thank you.
All right, and I'm not seeing any other hands up, so we will go to our next educational piece. That's the due process considerations in hiring, and that is being presented by our outside counsel, Dwayne Bennett.
Good evening, board, commissioners, and I have a brief PowerPoint. Liz said so much, and she said it so well that there's really very little for me to say. But as an attorney, I always have something to say. So if Alina or Charmaine, if you have the PowerPoint, I have just a couple of slides for you all, just as an outline. Okay, and tonight, what I wanted to talk about, just really briefly, is due process considerations in hiring. One of the areas of litigation and consternation is improper hiring and improper considerations when there is a hiring process and just an improper process. So I just wanted to go through that briefly. And when we talk about due process considerations in hiring, I just want to make it very simple and talk about what due process requires. You know, first of all, if you could not, or if you didn't ascertain by Liz's presentation, government employment for the most part is created by statute, meaning that in the private sector, typically speaking, you can just go into some place like Starbucks and they'll hire you and they give you a contract maybe, or they give you an employment agreement and you get hired at will. You're an at-will employee. You stay there as long as they will for you to stay there. That's not the case with government for the most part, particularly in the classified services, Liz said. Government employment is created by statute, meaning that there are statutory protections relative to government hires, and there is a certain convoluted bureaucratic process that we go through when we hire for purposes of government. But the process, when you look at the whole thing in context, is embedded in this concept that we call due process, which means that there has to be fair notice of whoever you're hiring or whatever the process is. The process needs to be clear. It needs to be noticed, and it needs to be uniform so that everybody is on the same page. The process has to be fair. There has to be a system of fairness where everybody is ranked equally or where everybody is ranked according to the same criteria. And I don't know how you all, or how this process that we're talking about, that you're talking about, I don't know how it was scored or how candidates were ranked per se. That appears to be one of the issues. And from the standpoint of due process, there has to be, or there should be, some objective way to fairly score all the candidates. Now, the one thing I will tell you is there was a question, Doug asked a question, or Vice Chair asked a question about the triage process that perhaps the executive firm used in ranking or scoring candidates. I don't know what that process was, but it has to be imbued in some type of objectified criteria that is defensible if it is challenged. That's where fairness comes in. The process has to be objective, meaning that it has to be an objective process that is not full with bias or favoritism, et cetera, and the law talks about some of those things, and there has to be an opportunity for equal participation. Meaning everybody who is an applicant has to be able to participate in the process and be fairly evaluated in the context of the process. Next slide, Alina. Okay, so under this notice concept, government employment, as I indicated, is created by statute, meaning that it is imbued in some type of law or city charter provisions or civil service provisions relative to the city. The noticing of any employment positions has to be clear and consistent. And if you're looking, if some of the people on the panel, or including, I'll put Charmaine in there also, the interim executive director, if some people think that they're hiring a bus driver or looking for a bus driver, and some people think that they're looking for an Uber driver, then there's going to be an incongruence in terms of what the expectations are and what the positions are. And this creates a conundrum from the standpoint of this due process concept. The process has to be clearly defined. It has to be consistent. It must be fair and objective. And the same metrics should be applied for consistency and integrity of the process. This is what Liz just mentioned, that everybody should be given the same questions. The process needs to be fair. It should be scored, because if there is a question in terms of how these candidates are ranked, if they're not force ranked, or if there's no system of scoring, then it becomes too subjective and it becomes really, really difficult to defend if it is challenged. And job positions have to be clearly defined. There has to be a clear description in terms of what you're looking for, who you're looking for, so that all the candidates know exactly what the job criteria is, and all the evaluators know what they're evaluating the job applicants based upon. Next slide. Fairness. Process has to be fair. I guess that goes without saying. And the way you achieve fairness is by an objective process. Clearly, if you have a scoring system, and I've been on several panels, and I've hired as city attorney and as general counsel, in some cases we use forced ranking, where the candidates were forcibly ranked. That was our objectified scoring system. In some cases, numeric scores were given based upon various metrics, but that's a way to achieve objectivity in every hiring process. If it is going to be a good process, full of integrity, has to have that. The process has to be consistently applied. It must be easy to discern, so that everybody who is interviewing and everybody who's being interviewed understands what the process is and where the rankings are coming in and how people are being scored. Okay. It's a very complicated process. And again, there has to be a criteria for ranking the candidates, either a scoring system that is numeric, or force ranked, or something of the sort. If it comes down to a system where we're going to pick people who make us feel good, or people who I remember I was involved in a process or heard about a process once where people said, well, that person just made us feel good and that's who we went with. Well, that's no good. Okay, that's not a fair process. And you can't defend it if it's challenged. Next slide. Objectivity. Next slide, please. In terms of the objectivity aspect in particular, we all know Title VII. And in California, the federal law is Title VII that requires equal employment opportunity. In California, we have what's called the Fair Employment and Housing Act, which generally, both statutes generally say the same thing. Under federal law, it's against the law to refuse to hire or discharge any individual on the basis of their ethnicity or their gender or their religion or their national origin. Next slide. That's the federal law. In California, the Fair Employment and Housing Act is even more inclusive. Just missed it. There you go. The Fair Employment and Housing Act, FEHA, Government Code Section 12940 et sec, it's broader. The current list of prohibited categories that can be considered in a hiring process include race, religion, creed, color, national origin, ancestry, physical disability, mental disability, medical condition, genetic information, marital status, sex, gender identity, gender expression, age, sexual orientation, or military and veteran status. None of these are proper or appropriate considerations in a hiring process. If you are considering that, or if those things come in, the process is not objective. And it is a violation of due process, and it creates all kinds of problems. I know we all understand that, but I just throw it out to you because it's a part of the due process conundrum. Next slide. And finally, fair opportunity. All candidates have to be given fair consideration based upon their defined criteria. And so, what is the criteria that these candidates are being defined on? Are some people thinking that they're looking for, an airplane pilot, and some people think they're looking for a Cessna pilot? If that's the case, then the process is not fair. Then there is a different set of criteria being applied to different candidates, and there is a problem. Evaluators should always have open minds, no biases. Fairness should always prevail. Again, I keep going back to this scoring or ranking system because there has to be a way to do that in an objective manner to preserve the integrity of your process. I think it's my final slide coming up. And I just wanted to say this in closing. I understand the consternation. I've heard it from the commissioners. You're struggling. Some commissioners are struggling with this whole process, and community is struggling with it. Charmaine's struggling with it. I just wanted to say one thing. When I was a city attorney in Oceanside, I was, by myself, in essence, being the first African-American city attorney in the county, and everything I did was scrutinized. Well, when I had to make my first hire decision, I had a process, and I got to hire in the unclassified service, and we ended up having 135 applications for our position. Well, what happened was I got into a little bit of a tiff with our human resources department, no disrespect, Liz, because they were the first line of triage in terms of who was going to get interviewed. We had 2 external panels, an internal panel, and finally the applicants will come to me. Well, I said that as the city attorney, I would like to see all of the applications first before they were triaged. HR took a crack at it, and all governments are the same in terms of their process, but they took a crack at it. They weeded out who they thought should matriculate to me. And I said, well, no, I'd actually like to see them all up front. And they got upset about that, because they thought I was challenging their professionalism, and I wasn't. It was just that I had an idea in terms of what I was looking for or what would be in the position, because I had been in all those positions. So when I took a look at the process, they gave me so many candidates. When I looked at the process, I broadened the pool. I didn't disregard anybody. They said, I just found more candidates that would fit the criteria. And as we went through the process, the candidate that ultimately was hired was one of those candidates who was never envisioned to be screened into the process. She was never screened in. They rejected her. And I said, well, she should be interviewed. And the external panels found her to be the best qualified, came to me. She ultimately was hired. She ultimately became assistant city attorney. She ultimately, when I left, she became the city attorney. So it's just, so from the standpoint of what you're going through, I would just, and this is not legal. This is just something that perhaps the commission would like to consider. Perhaps you don't have to scrap your whole process. Perhaps what you need to do is look at the pool that you have and broaden it. And perhaps do a reconsideration in light of what your criteria is, in light of the positions you have. Perhaps you don't do anything except go back to what you have and look at everybody and look at these positions anew to see if the process can be salvaged as opposed to scrapping the whole thing. That's just a suggestion from the standpoint of a person who's been in government for 38 years and knows how difficult the process could be. So that's my presentation. Thank you very much.
All right, thanks, Twain. I'm going to go to the public first. And again, I'm kind of giving a little bit of leeway. Typically, we do public comment, so I don't want these to get too off the rails. But the first up is Patrick, and then first up is Evie, and then I'm going to go to Patrick on the commission. So Evie, you should be allowed to unmute yourself.
Yeah, I'd like to ask Dwayne and perhaps even Liz, how does innovation then fit into any of this? This particular group was supposed to be pretty much run by the community. It even says that in the voter packet, which you can see, which is online. And a heavy lead from the community. That's why it got 75% of the voting people. And it would seem to me that without an ordinance, we can't even write the way the group would like to see it. So you're making decisions that need an ordinance number without an ordinance. The ordinance could take care of this, and it's being put off. So how do you take into account that this particular commission is supposed to be put together by the top people and the people that they can gather to come in who are going to be very different than some of the people have been before, to put together an organization they think works rather than something similar or like whatever is now. And they can't have that opportunity if they're hamstrung and if the top people aren't chosen in a way that the community feels comfortable with, and they with the people themselves with the community. I just feel if there's no way of letting this thing have its own birth and development, because the hamstringing that's happening with all of the rules and regulations through the hiring and through the particular interim group, which is trying to hold things together. I understand that. They are trying to keep going and have an oversight. The council doesn't seem to care. They're letting them work with half the numbers and doing nothing about it. But it shouldn't be to suddenly put in commission people to fill in that stuff. I'm really struggling to see how this can ever be what we envision it to be and what the community would like it to be. And until we can get the ordinance and let the ordinance decide these things. They have actually one ordinance already that says, you know, how they'll decide how the commissioners are going to be brought in. That's left up to the ordinance. So I think we're taking away.
Sorry, Evie, to interrupt. I think you're asking a lot of questions, and I want to give them some time to actually answer them before there's so many questions they can't get to.
I think the idea is out there, and I don't know if Liz or Dwayne can answer that.
Dwayne or Liz, I'll leave it up to either of you to try to answer that.
Well, I'll take a crack at it. Evie, I can't answer all of what you said. The ordinance is a problem. I'm sorry to say, when I accepted the position here, I thought things would be further along. I mean, the commission works extremely hard. As an outsider, I see how hard everybody works. Charmaine works extremely hard. Brandon, Doug, they all work way harder than I would be doing if I was in their positions. There's nothing that we can do from the standpoint of moving the ordinance along any faster. We've tried to get participation. They won't let us in. I don't quite get it and understand it. But in the meantime, to all you commissioners and to staff, I mean, I think the only thing that we can do at this point in time, if there's going to be even the semblance of a commission, is staff it as best you can. Get people in there to do as much of the work as you can. The commissioners are overworked. They have too many cases. I've been clear in saying I think they should stop taking cases because you just don't have the commissioners, but that's certainly your call. I think all you can do if there's going to be a commission is to continue to try to matriculate as best you can during these times. Otherwise, everything's going to come to a grinding halt, and none of this work that is even perceived or anticipated will get done.
All right, and then Patrick, hold on 1 second because I just saw another member of the public go up, and I will get to you, Marissa Talbert. One thing I do want to say real quick is Measure B doesn't specifically talk about the hiring practices, but the commission has tried to make sure that we're involving the community as much as possible in as many roles where it's appropriate. So Marissa, go ahead. You've got about 2 minutes to do any questions. You should be able to unmute yourself.
Can you all hear me?
Yep,
now?
you can. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So my name is Marissa Talbert. I am speaking on behalf of San Diegans for Justice. And we just really wanted to mention that we are concerned with the hiring of, or with the splitting of the deputy ED role, because we know that currently, CPP is at half staff. We know that there are other roles that still need to be hired, other roles that are specific to Measure B, that the CPP will still need to hire investigators and administrative staff. And we don't know that the CPP is going to be budgeted to really fulfill 2 deputy ED roles. And so we are really
sorry, Marissa,
concerned.
I kind of want to keep this on topic, and we're kind of getting out of the topic of what we were trying to go over here. So, and we're going way over on time. So I want to try to keep things going. And we've already kind of had public comment that kind of addressed that role in several meetings. So I don't mean to be rude and cut you off, but we're kind of off of the topic of the educational piece. So we're going to move on to Patrick and then any other commissioners.
Thank you. First, I want to thank Dwayne and Liz for explaining these labyrinthine systems. So I have 2 comments about things I've learned in these presentations or heard in these presentations. And just as a reminder, I have been on the transition committee since we founded it. I've been a part of these defining these jobs and this search process in particular from the very beginning. As you all know, I was one of the minority vote not to split the job and to continue on with the community panel and so on. My 2 comments are, first of all, tonight we're hearing a lot about scoring, and I heard Brandon and I think one other person say that there was a problem with scoring in the search, and that was another reason to stop it. Tonight is the first time I've heard that concern raised, and I apologize. I see a couple people looking at their screens like I heard wrong. So if I heard wrong, I apologize, but I thought I heard a couple people say that there was a problem with that search because there wasn't scoring. And again, this is the first time we've heard anything about this tonight. I do want to point out that, in fact, we did have 3 criteria. Doug discussed them and described them at the special meeting, and we used those 3 criteria when we were reviewing all of the applications. Those were the 3 that we used. I believe that would be considered, or that would fall into the category of that issue. But in any case, this is the first time we've heard this as a concern. The second thing I just want to highlight, and Liz, where's Liz on my screen? There you are. This came from your presentation. So I believe later tonight we're voting on the order of hiring from this point forward and the 2 position descriptions that will be used now for the split positions. I remember hearing during the discussion at the special meeting that it would be relatively easy to sort of get the searches going and get the community engagement coordinator hired, and we wouldn't be starting from 0. But Liz, I think what I heard you say is that once we've approved that position and we start the process of trying to get it exempt, I think I heard you say 2 to 3 months before it's approved, because it has to be approved by civil service and then city council. Did I hear that right, Liz?
Yes, but there's a caveat to it. If you have an existing vacant spot, you can use that temporarily. So if there's an existing position that's been vacant, in some cases you can, if you're in a hurry, you can use that position temporarily to fill while you are going through the exemption process for the position you're trying to obtain for unclassified roles.
I'm not sure I understand that answer. So with the
I know,
community
I'm sorry,
engagement,
it's so
for the community engagement coordinator, do we need to get that position exempted? And if so, okay, so we have to go through that process, and to get it approved, it takes
well, you do, but you can start recruiting for it now while you're going through that exemption process. And Charmaine can use temporarily an existing vacant budgeted spot to get the process rolling now while they're seeking the exemption. So that way we don't lose that extra couple months.
Does that mean we can announce the job and we can publicize it, or what?
Yes.
And we can start the process of the hiring process. Okay, thank you.
Well, you just can't hire someone though. You can start the recruitment, you can start the announcement and stuff, but you can't actually fill it until the position has been approved through those other processes, but you can start recruitment for it. I'm actually working on that right now for a position in my own team.
Okay.
I
Okay.
haven't, yeah, but I can start everything but hiring the position. I can advertise for candidates and things like that.
But best case scenario, you're saying 2 to 3 months for the hire.
To get them, yeah, well, yeah, because regardless, you do need that civil service and council part, but you can do all of the other parts of the recruitment process. The deputy executive director one is all ready to go, and we can start running a concurrent path for the community engagement one, or if that's the will of this body. And that way, hopefully in the next couple months. So civil service is dark for August, so there's no meeting again till September. They meet monthly.
So then we're probably looking at the 3 months minimum.
Yes.
And okay, thank you.
Okay, Robin.
I just also wanted to add my voice and note that I too was a dissent vote on this decision, and I'm not a member. I haven't been attending the transition committee meeting, so I'm sure I could have been better informed, but I certainly felt the decision was rushed. And I agree that there was a concern for me about a lack of transparency about how candidates were eliminated and determined that there was no qualified candidate. Typically having been involved in hiring processes at universities, that seemed odd to me. And I also think finally that as Patrick has just pointed out in discussion with Liz, we find that as a community member, not just a commissioner, I'm deeply concerned now that we keep talking about understaffing and that we're going to help ourselves by splitting this position to bring more staff, but apparently that isn't going to happen best case scenario for 3 months. And so I don't think that this is solving a problem.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, we're going to move on to the next agenda item, which is unfinished business. I want to try to get feedback on the triaging of our cases for case review, as well as the streamlined case reports. And then now that we have our case reports for officer notification. So for the public that might be watching, we have to let the officer know in a case that they have the opportunity to ask that their case be heard in open session rather than closed session. In our conversations with other oversight agencies throughout California, we've been told that they've never had an officer actually ask to have their case heard in open session. Wow, that got really big. But we still have to send out that notice and make sure that those officers have the ability to do that. So we've been sending out those notices, which is why when we've told our commissioners we have to have another additional week before we put that on our agenda. But we did want to try to get feedback from any commissioners about the streamlined cases. And the idea there is rather than having, a 20-page report, that we can basically get to the meat of each allegation, address any topics. And if, for example, we agree with internal affairs and their finding, we can kind of be a little bit more brief in our summary of that. And it helps us be able to review, write our reports faster and also present them faster. So with that, I wanted to open it up to any commissioners to discuss things that they like about it, don't like about it, concerns they have. So anyone, feel free to raise your hand, take it away. Doug, go ahead.
Yep. I was just going to say at the team leaders meeting last time, we discussed the process, and we've asked the team leaders to come to the next team leader meeting with a description of all the cases they have and which ones they think we can do in an expedited fashion. And then the team would then write a memo, not dissimilar from a category 2 audit memo that would go to the commission for in closed session for a vote, so that we could handle those cases without doing the full-scale review. And we're still in the process of doing that, but we have begun the process of we began the process, but it probably is going to be a couple of months before we start seeing cases get off of our plate through the new process. So I would keep this on the agenda to see how it progresses in the next couple of months.
Okay. Does anybody else have any comments? Okay, I'm not seeing any hands, so I'm going to guess there aren't any concerns to date. So with that, we can go on to the next item, which is new business. We're going to turn this over to Doug. First one is commission staffing needs and the sequence of the executive job searches.
Okay, and this ties to the discussion that we just had. Let me first outline all of the positions that we hope to fill for the commission. The executive level positions include the community engagement coordinator, and we may change the name of that, but it will be an executive level position, as was just discussed. The supervising investigator, and 3 regular investigators, a policy analyst, a performance auditor, the deputy executive director, and then the permanent executive director and the general counsel. And in addition to that, there was one administrative position that needs to be filled, which is a senior financial analyst. Just as a little bit of background there, when we created Robin's position, it was intended to be half-time a complaints coordinator and half-time financial work. And we discovered 2 things. Number one is that it really is a full-time job to be the complaints coordinator. And 2, we needed a higher level of person to do budget management. And so we agreed to split that into 2 positions. So after that is split, Robin will be a full-time complaints coordinator, and we'll be beginning a search for the senior financial analyst, which will be an administrative position. And so at the ad hoc committee on the transition planning committee, we talked about what should be the order of those hires. And the first 3 we came to a consensus on should be the community engagement coordinator, and the agreement was made at our last special meeting that that position would move forward immediately. Second is the supervising investigator, and the supervising investigator we want to have on board as soon as possible for 2 reasons. Number one, we are in the process of developing our investigation guidelines, and we'd like for that individual to be involved in the process. And then secondly, that individual needs to be involved in the hiring process for the individual investigators. And we have an immediate need to bring the financial analyst position online. So those were the 3 that will proceed immediately, or as quickly as we can. And I should mention that some of the job descriptions are included for information in the board packet. And so the board voted to bifurcate the deputy executive director and the community engagement coordinator. And that bifurcation is included in your packet. We also have in the packet the supervising investigator job description, which, as I indicated, we're going out for. There was a debate of whether or not the next hire after those 3 should be the deputy executive director. And there were 2 positions. The majority position was that should be the next hire, so the 4th on the list there after the 3 immediate ones. And the rationale that was given during the discussion, number one, was that there is a lot of work and that Charmaine is overwhelmed, and that there is enough work for 2 individuals to complete those tasks. And then secondly, the deputy executive director will be responsible for supervising 2 of the senior executive positions that I just mentioned. And it makes sense to have that person involved in the hiring of the persons that they are going to supervise. So that was the majority opinion. The minority opinion was that we should wait until we have a permanent executive director and allow the permanent executive director to select their number 2 or the deputy executive director. Anyway, so that's what we need to vote on tonight, is where we would place the deputy executive director in that process. The other positions that would follow would be the policy analyst and the performance auditor, and then the 3 investigators. So the performance auditor and policy analyst would probably be a concurrent search. The investigators depend upon how far along we are in the investigation process. And then it was determined that we determined quite some time ago that we would wait until we had a permanent commission before we did the permanent executive director search. And we also agreed that the general counsel as a staff position should be a position that the permanent executive director should be involved in selecting. And so those are the options. So for the sake of discussion, I would make a motion from the committee that the majority recommendation from the committee be implemented, and that is that the deputy executive director search would commence immediately after the top 3 immediate searches that I already mentioned. And again, those were the community engagement coordinator, the supervising investigator, and the senior policy analyst. And since it came from the committee, it doesn't require a second, but I would encourage people on the committee as well as others to give their rationale for why they took their position. So
I just want to try to add one thing is, and then Liz, if you could chime in on this, my understanding, and I think this kind of goes to Patrick's question about roles and how things go through getting approved. We can basically swap any already approved program manager role for another. So if we're trying to do the community engagement role, we can basically just swap them in the role, in the positions we have, as long as they're already approved, correct? Which that would save some time. So if we're moving that as our number 1 priority to hire, that we could basically keep going with that because we already have that position filled, or not filled, but approved. Is that correct?
To my knowledge, yes.
Okay.
I want to I'm because that's what we're doing with another position that I've been working on as well. I believe that it's not a problem. As long as you've received you have a vacant budgeted position, I think you're okay.
Yeah, so my understanding, and I think Charmaine has had more discussions about this, is we could essentially swap out the performance auditor position with the community engagement one, because those are both already approved in different ways, that we could just kind of swap those roles. So we don't have to go back and kind of delay the whole process for 2 to 3 months. That would allow us to be able to essentially start today and be able to even hire that person as soon as we're done with that hiring process. So I don't think, to Patrick and Robin's point, I don't think it's going to truly, I hope it won't truly take 3 months, but I think that's only because we already have existing positions in that category already approved and already exempted. I just want to confirm on that, but we'll run that through kind of separately through you guys and personnel. But with that, Patrick, you have your hand up.
Well, first of all, that's not what Liz actually said. What Liz said is we can start the process because we're swapping out 2 roles, exempt roles, essentially, one of which has already been approved, but we can't make the hire for the community engagement position until the community engagement position has been approved to be exempt. Isn't that what you said, Liz? We can't make the hire.
I think I need to confirm. Actually, I mean, I don't want to give an opinion if I know. I'm not 100% certain. I thought that you can't make the hire until you already. I guess I was kind of confused on how it was.
Well, so we need to get this answered, I think, is the answer, right?
So what I was saying a little bit earlier is, I mean, I don't want to put Liz on the spot, but my understanding, and I think this is what we've been told by personnel and HR in the past, is because we essentially have multiple program manager roles that have already been approved, we can move one that we've titled, the performance auditor, to the one that we have now as community engagement, we can swap those, and then we can still run the other one kind of in the background
Okay.
to get that done. But we'll confirm that with the city and NHR personnel. But that's my understanding, and so I think that kind of will help us
Okay.
shorten that timeline. But
Well,
I don't want
okay,
to put Liz
so
in the hot seat.
That was
and
what I
will, yeah.
understood. So Brandon, that's what I was thinking. The swap, then you can hire right away. I was thinking you only have one, and let's just use that one temporarily. We haven't gotten the second one. So that's why I was thinking, oh, it takes the 3 months. But in this case, you already have the 2 spots. So we're just going to swap the 2 spots around. So then in that case, you could hire.
Okay.
That's why sorry, it's getting late. I'm like, what was it? I'm just tracking it.
Yeah, so if that's true, then that's a relief. But here's the comment that I was going to make. First of all, Doug, I think it might have been hard to follow some of the ordering, and I still have the document open from our meeting on Friday. If people would like for me to share the actual text of the order, Alina, am I able to do that, or do I have to request? Let me just see if it'll let me do that.
It should let you. There you go.
Okay, so these are the 2 options that Doug was talking about. Option 1 is the one that had the majority vote. That's here. I was the minority vote who voted for option 2. And so that's this one down here. In other words, waiting on the deputy position until we've hired all the other ones. And there are really 2 reasons why that was my preferred order. The first one is that many of the functions that the CPP is supposed to have, and that I think, Charmaine has been trying to cover, although it's impossible for one person to cover this, are these positions down here. For us not to have a policy analyst, given the number of memos that we've been writing, given the number of policy questions we have and so on, and a performance auditor to help the commission get back on track, and really to sort of audit and track how the commission is functioning alongside its mandate. Those are really important functions that, in my opinion, the commission should really get moving on bringing those folks in, with the added benefit of them taking a lot of the stuff off Charmaine's desk. The other reason that my opinion was that the commission should wait to hire the deputy executive director is that this relationship between the executive director and the deputy executive director is really important for the culture of an office. It's a crucial relationship. And in my opinion, until the executive director is a permanent executive director, we shouldn't hire a deputy to that person. And I know one of the responses that I heard at that meeting was that people move through these jobs a lot. The permanent executive director, if they don't get along with the executive director, it's an at-will position, so they can always fire them and start over. In my opinion, that would be much more traumatic for a new city office and a new commission than waiting until the executive director is permanently appointed. And that person can then hire a deputy that we know will work well with them. So those are the 2 reasons. Again, the first one is that I think these functions are crucial, and the commission really needs to get folks on board to start carrying these tasks. And the second reason, again, is that I think this relationship is absolutely crucial. And it's better to wait to let a permanent person hire a deputy than it is to risk potentially a new permanent person coming in and really not working well with the deputy, having to fire that person and start all over with a hire. I'll stop there. Should I leave this up, or have folks seen enough of it?
I would say leave it up, and I can also
Okay.
pull up the org chart, or at least the current proposed org chart if we need that as well. Doug, I saw you had your hand up earlier. Do you still wanted to make a comment?
No, but I might mention too that the org chart is also in the board packet.
Yes. Are there any other commissioners that wanted to chime in?
Well, then I guess maybe I would like to have, since Charmaine was the one who requested the bifurcation and also advocated for option one, I would like for her to explain her rationale for option one as opposed to option two. And I guess in particular, the immediacy of the need.
Okay, so I felt that, as the interim ED for the commission, I feel that it is very important that we have a second person in charge of the commission. Hiring the staff is a lot of work. It takes a lot of time. Also moving the commission forward with all of these tasks. And also we're in the process of doing our move. So as we are continuing to hire staff, there's at least a 1-year learning curve that I would have to be training, all of the positions to bring them up to speed. Also, that goes along with hiring staff, the managerial portion of it, supervising the staff. So I know the personnel department, when the Commission on Police Practices was created last year, they informed me that a second position is needed for all of the department directors. This is a new department, and we are building it from the bottom up. And yes, it is a lot of moving pieces. And I can't stress, because I know that the only staff that I do have is Alina and Robin right now. So I guess some of the commissioners might not understand the bulk of the work that is being done behind the scenes, but it is a lot. I know we all want to make sure that this commission, serves the community, and that this commission is actually doing what it's supposed to be doing, and keeping in mind Measure B. But I just think that the Deputy Executive Director position should be up there, should be a priority position, as it was previously.
Okay, thanks. Nancy, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Yes, I guess I'm part of the majority vote on option one, but I wasn't happy with that order. We've just spent several months getting into the weeds of hiring a deputy executive director, and I don't want to see that effort go by the wayside. I think that should come right after community engagement coordinator as soon as we can, maybe concurrently, since we've already been working on both of those positions. Even if it was as one position, we can now start thinking about two and get it done. I think that one's absolutely critical. And if you guys think back to some words of wisdom that Dwayne gave us, you might remember that there is a lot of work being done now. 724 is the way he described Charmaine's participation, and it's time to have somebody working with her and taking more of that off of her plate and still getting it done. We can get supervising investigator later. We can come up with our own investigation process, and that can be changed. That is not something we're going to put together and have it cast in concrete. So the supervising investigator, to me, can come later. I think the deputy should be immediate. Thank you.
All right, thanks. Andrea, you're up.
Thank you. I just wanted to mention real quick that I've seen both Robin and Alina sent emails on Sundays, which most of us do not spend working. And so, I do agree that obviously this office needs more administrative support. And I would also just consider how existing staff members are stretching their time at present to meet the needs of the community and this commission. And when I see a staff member email on a Sunday, then that does not go unnoticed for me personally. My staff works 7 days a week. That's because we're a 7 day a week program. But when I see that out, I'm not used to seeing that, period. So I just wanted to point that out.
Charmaine, you still have your hand up. Did you have another comment?
Yes, I just wanted to mention the sustainability of the commission. God forbid if something was to happen to me, if I was to get COVID, or, let's say if I was gone for maybe like a month or so, what's going to happen to the commission? How is the commission going to still be able to move forward? I'm thinking of the big picture, and down the line, we need to be thinking about the sustainability of this commission as we are moving forward as well. So that's why I think that this DED position is really, really important.
And then I would also add, I know it's kind of been brought up on a couple other topics, but there are 2 positions that would report to that deputy role. And I know we've kind of had people talk about it. I do think it probably makes sense in many ways to have kind of the management there first. Like I know typically when I've applied for jobs in other areas, usually you make sure the C-level employees are all in place before they start hiring VPs or directors. And I think this is kind of another one of those areas where you probably want to have that deputy level person there prior to hiring the performance auditor and the policy analyst. And to Patrick's point, I think both those roles are vitally important. I think we need to basically get to those, I mean, I don't say immediately, but without delay. And my concern is just knowing how long the implementation ordinance has taken going through city council and meet and confer. We did our best guess of a timeline and we thought everything would be up and running at the latest by January of next year. And I think right now, I don't think that's realistic anymore. So I think if we keep pushing it down the road, we're going to continue to have the problem that we have where we're not really able to do the oversight role that the community expects of us because we can't get staffed up properly. So I know we've been going on this for a long time. Unless there's any other hands that want to raise, Doug has a motion on the table, which we don't need a second because it came from committee. I don't see other hands up. So Charmaine, can you call a vote?
I thought we needed a second.
Wait a minute, could Doug repeat the motion that we're voting on?
Sure, if you could put the, Patrick, if you can put the option 1 and 2 back up there. It is to, the motion is to accept option 1. And the difference between option 1 and option 2 is when the deputy executive director is hired. In option 1, it would be hired as soon as the immediate searches are completed. And in option 2, it would wait until after the permanent executive director is hired. So those are so the motion on the floor is for option 1 as opposed to option 2.
Can we have a little bit of flexibility?
In terms, I'm not sure. I think the answer is yes, but I'm not sure what you mean, but what you're asking specifically.
Just because working with the city, they might be able to push the senior financial analyst position.
Oh, yes, yeah. And so these, and a lot of things are going to be in flux as things happen. So yes, this is the plan. We are a planning committee. Things have gotten moved around on us quite a bit. And so yes, this is our current plan, but obviously our plans can change. And I forgot to mention that the next, well, depending upon how after the commission votes tonight, I will be developing a revised timeline that will kind of lay out when all these positions are going to be hired. And as we know from experience that, timelines are very flexible and keep changing. And unfortunately they change so that they're longer. But so to answer your question is yes, there is flexibility. This is just the general plan.
So
Okay, so
go
can
ahead.
I ask a question, please, Ernestine?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so if we vote no on option 1, that means we're voting that we prefer the director be hired before the deputy, right? So if we vote no on 1, that's what that means?
Yes, if you vote no on 1, and the intent is that
You can make all kinds
that we go with option 2, and option 2 would be that the deputy executive director would be the last position that is hired. And by the way, there's also a position on here that is not on the list, and that is the community engagement coordinator, and that will be hired after the city council has given us the ability to do mediation. And so probably on both of the list, that would be the last one, number 9.
You meant the mediation coordinator.
Okay, but may I continue then my question? So Charmaine, your point was that if the deputy was hired now, that would be helpful to you now? Or
Yes.
no?
Yes, correct. Mhm.
And if
So
I can
now, I
respond to that,
don't know.
everybody had, I mean, we agreed at the last meeting that the community engagement coordinator would be our next hire. And that was part of the motion actually last time when we talked about bifurcation. We did not talk about when the deputy executive director would be hired. We've already begun the process for the supervising investigator, and the financial analyst will actually be handled by Charmaine, and so that she can essentially do that whenever she wants to. So that's why we came up with the option 1 and option 2 listed as they are there.
So your motion is for us to approve option 1?
That's correct, option 1.
Okay, if that's, you've done a lot of work on this, and so I respect your work on this and your judgment. So if that's what you recommend.
Well, that's what the committee recommended.
Okay.
Okay, Nancy, you have your hand up?
Yes, please. I would like to offer a friendly amendment, Doug, and put deputy executive director in number 2 slot, please.
Well,
I think that should come right after, and I don't know what you're doing to hire a supervising investigator, because I haven't seen any of that.
Okay, well, we already have the job description, and we've already assigned that to David to begin working on. And we have an immediate need for a supervising investigator for the reasons that I explained. And so I'm not willing to amend that. You can make an amendment to the motion, but I'm not willing to accept it as an amendment without a separate vote.
Okay, and the other thing that I don't see us voting 1 or 2, I don't see why if we vote down option 1, we can't create our own list in a different order than what's option 2.
I mean, that's true. The motion on the floor is option 1.
Right. I still think we need to get deputy executive director, because I don't, never mind. I don't understand any of it.
Honorable Chair and Vice Chair, just as a point of clarity, the motion that you have on the floor should be voted on up or down, but alternative motions can be made by any member of the commission.
Yeah, well, I mean, they can make an amendment to the motion.
Or a new motion, Chair, Vice Chair. They can make a new motion if somebody.
We have to dispense.
They have to vote your motion first, though.
Exactly. So we have to, yeah. So we have to vote on the current motion, and then if that motion fails, we could vote on another motion.
Yes, there you go.
So in the agenda, the action item we have is the approval of the sequence of the executive job searches for the CPP, and that was option 1. So again, that came from the transition committee, so we don't need a second because it came from one of our committees. Nancy, I see your hand up. Is that your
Yes.
previous question?
So can I, if Doug doesn't accept an amendment, can I propose the amendment and have it voted on?
Nancy, I'm so sorry to interrupt you. I do want to just make sure you remember though that the supervising investigator position, we've already written that job ad and it's already in the hands of the recruiter. So what you're talking about, moving the deputy up above that, would mean now stopping that process. And so I just want to, I'm not trying to convince or dissuade you from anything, but just to make sure you understand, we're not at 0 with supervising investigator. That job ad is already done and with the recruiter.
We aren't exactly at 0 with deputy executive either. We've gone through and had people respond and looked at people who responded. We're right. We've been working on that one for months, Patrick.
I think also this is kind of where, and Charmaine, I don't mean to speak for you, but I think when you asked for there to be a little bit of flexibility, I think the idea is we don't want to have to start the process, hire, the community engagement coordinator, and then start a position 2, finish that, and then start position 3. Because I believe when we had our last conversation with the recruiter, he was basically going to be able to run like 3 at the exact same time. So we don't have to finish job 1 before we go to job 2, job 3. We could theoretically get those first 3 all in that same batch and have those all roughly at the same time. I think the idea here is this is like a high level kind of, this is the objective of how we're trying to hire these positions and in the order. But I think, if, for example, the supervising investigator position, as we're going through the process, if that takes longer than the senior financial analyst, I don't think that means we don't hire the senior financial analyst. It just means that, we get those done as quickly as we can for each process. But I think, Charmaine, that was kind of what I think you might be trying to say, but I didn't want to speak for you. So if
Yes.
I spoke out of turn, correct me.
You are correct.
So we have a motion, and again, we're going really late on time. I want to try to keep things going. So we have the motion to approve essentially option 1. Let's go for a vote. So the motion's from the transition committee.
Yes, Commissioner Case,
Yes.
Commissioner Vaughn,
No.
Commissioner Anderson,
No.
Commissioner Dent,
Yes.
Commissioner Spruce,
No.
Commissioner Hamilton,
He said because he had to leave.
Commissioner Shea,
Yes.
Commissioner Darby Griffin,
Yes.
Commissioner Smith,
Yes.
Commissioner Clark,
Yes.
Commissioner Pink is excused. Chair Hooper.
I was going to abstain, but so right now we're at 6 yes. Is that correct?
That is correct.
I'll vote yes.
Motion passes.
All right, so the next item we have, and again, this is still Doug, this is over for you. This is the roles and expectations for all participants in the commission's hiring process when the community panelists are involved. So the action item that's proposed is approval of the list of roles and expectations for all participants in the commission's hiring process when the community panelists are involved. And again, that document was included in the agenda packet.
And if we could have, I'm not sure whether it's Elena or Robin who is controlling it. I think it was page 36, if I remember correctly, of the packet. Okay, if you can make it a little bit larger, then I can just read it from the screen, and it's short enough that that I want to read it because this basically is to clarify the process, and as a result of the educational the educational presentation tonight was related to this, and we had this discussion at the transition planning committee, and this was a consensus document, and so let me just go through it real quickly. It spells out the roles of each of the groups. The ad hoc transition planning committee would provide input for consideration for CPSHR, which is our consulting firm, and the interim executive director on the ideal candidate attributes and priorities of a position. And this is for all the executive search positions. Provide feedback for consideration of the actually, I take that back because this was specific to the community engagement one because we're utilizing the community panels for that one. And so anyway, continuing, and on the recruitment brochure and the outreach strategy prepared by the consultant to review the list of semifinalist candidates by the search firm and make changes where appropriate to submit a list of approximately 5 to 7 candidates to the community advisory panel and selection committee. Second is the community advisory panel. They would conduct the first round of interviews with semifinalists, work with the consultant on questions of candidates and format. They would complete the confidentiality agreement, and then they would submit feedback forms to the selection committee. Then the selection committee We conduct the second round of semifinalist interviews, work with the consultant on questions for the candidates and the format, recommend the top 3 candidates and feedback to the interim executive director for consideration. The selection committee will consist of members of the commission and a community representative. Okay, and then the role of the executive director is to provide input to the CPS, the search firm, on the ideal candidate, attributions and priorities of the position, approve recruitment brochure and outreach strategy prepared by the consultant, participate in the discussion and provide feedback to the ad hoc transition planning committee meeting on recommendations of semifinalists, which is a change in the process, and participate as an observer in the selection committee interviews, also a change in the process, and then interview finalist candidates and select the top candidate. And then the role of the search firm is to prepare the brochure and the strategy, implement the outreach to the potential candidates, screen the candidates who meet the minimum qualifications, recommend semifinal candidates to the selection committee, prepare materials, coordinate the candidate logistics, and assist with the facilitation of finalist interviews and perform background checks on all of the finalist candidates. So we did this because of the issues that arose with the previous search, so that there would be clarity in the position this time. And so we wanted to have the commission approve this document. And again, this is specific to the community engagement coordinator. We have not determined that we would be utilizing a community panel in other positions, but we, as you see in here, we have determined that we would have a community representative on the selection committee for all of the positions. And so again, this is coming from the committee, so I would make a motion that the commission adopt these guidelines.
I've muted myself there. I will quickly open up to any questions. All right, not seeing any. Charmaine, can we go for a vote, please?
Commissioner Case,
Yes.
Commissioner Vaughn,
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson,
Yes.
Commissioner Dent,
Yes.
Commissioner Spruce,
Yes.
Commissioner Shane,
Yes.
Commissioner Dabba Griffin,
Yes.
Commissioner Smith,
Yes.
Commissioner Clark,
Yes.
and Chair Hopert.
I'll vote yes.
Motion passes 10-0-0.
All right. Moving on to the next item, which is committee chair reports. And again, since we're running late, I don't think we have too many. Nancy, did you have anything for continuing education you specifically wanted to touch base on?
No report.
Okay. Outreach committee with Patrick. Unfortunately, Patrick yesterday notified us of his intent to resign at the end of the month. So I told him he could use some of his outreach time to say his farewells or any other final comments. So Patrick, I'll hand it on over to you.
Thanks. I'll be brief. I know everyone is exhausted. I don't have an update except to say that I'm very pleased that a community panel will be involved as we just voted. I'll try to be brief. It's been an intense 4 years. I've learned a lot. I've appreciated getting to know everybody here personally and in the capacity of working on this commission. I will, there are a lot of different parts of this work that I will miss. And the biggest thing I'll miss is being in touch with the people I've gotten to know. It's intense to be in a role like this. And the biggest intensity for me has been witnessing the cases that we've reviewed and spending as much time as we have to spend with them, watching the body worn camera footage and listening to interviews and reading and writing and getting to know the policy and procedures and making policy recommendations. It's hard. And I don't know what to say about that. But I know that having spent so much time on that at this point with all of you has been a very human experience. And it has felt like a community experience, even though we are closed in our meetings and discussions most of the time. The part of, for the last 2 years as the community engagement person, the part of this work that has given me the most hope is working intimately with so many people who are and have been for a long time deeply engaged in this work, and who show up to our meetings and talk to us and listen and bring their knowledge from lived experience and from their wisdom to us to consider. That to me is the heart of this work. And that's the part that has given me life over this entire pandemic period. And it's made me feel connected to San Diego in all kinds of new and crucial ways. So I would encourage those of you staying on to throw yourselves into that part of this job too. It's incredibly life-giving to feel a part of this city in this way. The heartbreak that I have felt many times in case review and so on is harder to live with and is not the part of this work that I will long for, which isn't to say that I'll turn away from it, because it's a part of life for people in San Diego, but it's hard. So to all of you, thank you for allowing me to be a part of your life for the last 4 years. And I want nothing but good things for each of you, and especially for this commission. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Patrick. And if any of the commissioners would like to try to take over for his position as outreach chair, I'll be trying to reach out to you guys. We'll need to try to have someone from the commission fill that role until we can add new commissioners and start that process. So with that, if anyone wants to say anything, I'll give a quick second for people to raise any hands. Ernestine, go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to say to Patrick that I've been on this board, what, 12 years, 13 years, and Patrick, when you came on, you just really added to it. And so we're going to miss you. I mean, you do so much. You really do a lot. And you're just so much fun to have around too. We're going to miss you. I'm going to miss you.
Yeah, and since I don't see any other hands up, I'll just say, thank you. You have done a lot, especially when I kind of put you, and Diane, I see your hand waving. I kind of voluntold you to be outreach chair, and you took the mantle and you ran with it. So I have to say, you did a great job working with the community, helping with the transition and all that process. And so thanks for your work on that. Diana, go ahead.
Just want to say thank you, Patrick, for all your hard work and for all the outreach that you've done for our community, and bringing it back to our board to share with us the many ideas that you have gathered from your work with them. So we really are going to miss you, and we really appreciate your hard work. Thank you so much for all that.
All right, I'm going to try to keep moving since I know we're almost at our time to end and we have a bit more to go. We don't have anything from Rules Committee. We don't have anything from the Handbook Committee. For policy, for me, I'm going to be setting up a meeting working with the Policy Committee to find some dates and times that work. We did receive several recommendations or responses to recommendations back from SDPD. We'll talk about that once we get to the SDPD part. But there's a couple that I think we want to respond to try to see if we can get some clarity on that. So we'll be doing that with policy. Kevin's not here with recruitment, and obviously there's not too much we can do until we have an implementation ordinance. I was not able to participate in the Citizens Advisory Board meeting So I'll try to watch the video, and actually no, the last one I think got canceled actually. Yeah. So I won't be watching that video, but we have been working with them. Doug, I know you've already gone over quite a bit for the transition planning committee. Is there anything you want to quickly touch base on?
I'll be real brief. We have a lot of balls in the air, and we went over the staffing part of it tonight. We also are working our way through the investigation procedures. Dwayne has prepared a draft for us, which we are working through. And we're waiting on the city's Department of Real Estate and whatever else is in that title to review the contract for our office space. So I'll leave it at that.
Perfect, thank you. With that, Poppy resigned last month. And so I did ask the commissioners if anyone wants to step up and take the role of second vice chair. I did hear from Kevin, and he said he'd be willing to do that. He unfortunately stepped off, so he can't vote for himself. But I guess the motion would be to nominate Kevin. And Nancy also told me that if no one else wanted to do that, that she would be willing to step in. So since Kevin said he's wanting to do it, based on Nancy's feedback, if he fails or whatever, then we can go back to Nancy. But I guess the motion is to vote to have Kevin become the second vice chair. Is there any discussion or feedback on that?
I'm all for it. I think it's great. I think he'll do it.
Okay, so I guess technically I can make the motion, and then Ernestine will second since she spoke next.
All right.
If there's no other comments, let's go for a vote.
And do we have any other nominations from the floor?
I didn't ask for that, but I did send out emails to all the commissioners asking to see if anyone wanted to go, but if there's any floor nominations, we'll take that as well. And I'm not seeing any, so I think we only have Kevin as the current.
Okay, sounds good. First, Vice Chair Case,
Yes.
Commissioner Vaughn,
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson,
I'm going to abstain because I'm going to not be on this commission.
Commissioner Dent,
Yes.
Commissioner Spruce,
Yes.
Commissioner Shea,
Yes.
Commissioner Dabba Griffin,
Yes.
Commissioner Smith,
Yes.
Commissioner Clark,
Yes.
Chair Hilfert.
I'll vote yes.
Motion passes 901.
All right. I will run over the chair's report super fast since we're going way over. Just a reminder, I know we've been sending out emails to please make sure you get your hours in on the Better Impact system so we can just track how many volunteer hours we're putting in. Just kind of a quick reminder of the interim bylaws we have for kind of our overall independence and ethical conduct and code of ethics. Again, what we've done there is we've pretty much adopted what NACOL, the National Oversight kind of partnership trade association, essentially, what they've kind of proposed, we have adopted that here in San Diego. So just a reminder for that. And then if anyone wants to go in, it's kind of always a reminder, if anyone wants to go into IA on the weekends, please make sure that you schedule that a little bit further in advance so we can make sure there's proper staffing there. For the updates on collaboration and sharing with this statewide organizations, we do have a quarterly meeting that's a statewide organization, which we've actually gotten quite a few good pieces of feedback on. That actually resulted in one of the recommendations we made to the police department to basically add audio to the BWC, the body camera buffer. So the next meeting, I believe, is next month, I believe. And the regional one is kind of more Southern California, more focused on Los Angeles. We did also talk with our counterparts at CLRB, and they've actually joined that as well. So we're slowly adding kind of other agencies in there, which is great. And if anyone from our group wants to attend, I know basically Charmaine, Doug, and myself typically try to attend those when we can. But if anyone else wants to, obviously you're all more than welcome to. So let me know and I can get you added to those invitations. We were going to try to do a meeting with the Citizens Advisory Board regarding the countywide MOU, but we haven't had any time to set that up. And I think we're just kind of waiting on that one. So I don't have any updates. With that, are there any questions from the commission for me? All right, not seeing any. Charmaine, I will hand it over to you for the executive director report.
Great, thank you. And I would like to read most of my statistics into the meeting minutes for tonight. We do have 83 active cases assigned to the teams. We have at least one Category 1 case and one discipline ready for the next agenda. If anyone has any cases that are ready, please let me know as soon as possible. We're trying to get the notification letters to the officers at least a week in advance. If we get any more cases by tomorrow, we'll be able to send the notification letters out to the officers. I'm thinking our next closed meeting might take place on August 9th, depending on the number of cases we received as well. So this fiscal year, which started on July 1st, the Commission reviewed, deliberated on, and closed out a total of 11 cases, all of which were Category 1 cases. And the Commission also evaluated 7 disciplines and 1 shooting review board report and agreed to send a letter to the chief and the mayor regarding that report. The next item is the planning for the member commissioner appreciation and acknowledgements. I believe the tour that we're going to be doing. Robin, do you have any updates on this item?
Yes, I'm just going to keep it really short. I just wanted to let everyone know that I reached out to the mayor's office, and asked for multiple dates in hopes it will align with our completion of office space. But again, it is currently under review, and I know the mayor is very busy, but I'll try to keep a follow-up with the mayor's office. In the meantime, I'm just working on ordering materials and planning out certain logistics, but that's pretty much it. Thanks.
Excellent, thank you. And the next item is the NACOL conference, and that's taking place, September 11th through the 15th in Fort Worth, Texas. This year is going to be the in-person conference as well as the virtual conference. The virtual conference is going to take place all day on October 26th, November 2nd, and November 9th. We do have a few commissioners who have already signed up to attend the in-person conference. Also on August 16th, NACOL is holding a webinar on policing regulation and oversight trends, problems, and solutions. So if you are available and would like to attend the webinar, please let Alina know. She will register you. I received a few questions also regarding how commissioners can become certified practitioners of oversight. And this is a NACOL credential program. To qualify for certification, a participant must receive a minimum of 45 credit hours of NACOL certified training and attend at least 2 annual NACOL conferences within 3 consecutive years. They have to also read 2 items from NACOL's approved reading list. We are also trying to build our library from scratch of police oversight material books as well.
I'll just add real quick, sorry to interrupt. I mean, if anyone's interested, some of the ebooks essentially of some of the reading, I've actually put those into a shared library on our secured Google Drive. It's under CVP shared docs. So I think I have like 7 or 8 different articles and journals in there. So those will count for your required reading for NACOL.
Excellent. So I know that me and First Vice Chair Case are already certified through NACOL, and I think Chair Hilpert, you're working on your certification as well.
Yeah, after this upcoming conference, I'll be certified.
Excellent. And Commissioner Vaughn, and I know you've been attending the NACOL conferences, no? Okay. So yes, that completes my report. Does anyone have any questions?
I do, Charmaine. If we have a case ready, can I give it to you tomorrow?
Yes. Yes. Hopefully.
I'll send the memo tonight.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
Sure.
All right, moving on, trying to keep things going as we're a little bit over. It's the SGPD report out. As I said a little bit earlier, we did get several of our recommendations back, the responses back from our recommendations, and those have all been posted up to our website. But I'll turn it over to Executive Chief McGrath.
Good evening, Executive Board and Commissioners. Patrick, thank you very much for your work on the commission for over the last 4 years. It was very valuable. So on behalf of the Chief of Police and the members of our police department, thank you very much.
I have to apologize. I was kind of juggling a couple of meetings tonight, but I was taking some notes as I was listening to both. And I first want to say to Doug's comments that I really appreciated the support. He's in fact, he's correct. We really only kind of sort of hear the bad comments most days, and it's refreshing to hear a few positive statements. So thank you, Doug, for that. Our department ensures that every member of every part of our communities are valued and respected, regardless of their sexual orientation, their gender identity, or their gender expression. And if you were at the parade and had a chance to see our members who identify as LGBTQ+, we were so very proud of them, and they were very proud to be part of that parade and the support that they received. So thank you for that. On the theme of recruitment, and we were talking about that tonight, I just want to make sure that I kind of reiterate something that the chief has made a commitment on and spoke about it several times. And that is, his commitment has always been that we are going to be committed to hiring very diverse candidates hopefully from San Diego, but from regionally within the county, and to also adhere to the challenge that we've been given nationally to fulfill our requirements for the 30 at 30 program. And if anybody doesn't know what that is a commitment that we've made, that we would like to have 30% of our workforce being females by the year 2030. And so I'd like to report out, just from my recollection over the last 3 academies, we've been very good, but our diverse percentage in our academies over the last 3 have been 70%, 70%, and then 80% this last academy. And then our females have been right around 23%, 25%. I think this last academy, we were close to 28% if we didn't go over 28%. So we're doing our part, and we're finding some very qualified people, and we're very excited about that. To kind of go along with the staffing theme, last fiscal year, we lost 230 police officers. And that was roughly about 50%, or 52% actually, over our 2020 numbers. So we're working very diligently and trying to retain our people. As you may have read in the newspaper, the mayor came out with instituting his incentive program again, and was voted on by the council. And so any member of our department who recruits someone from our community and they successfully go through training will receive $4,000, which is a nice incentive. And then our laterals who come from other departments will be offered $15,000 as an incentive once they've signed on and then been able to successfully go through training and have worked for us for a period of time. So we're waiting to see how that's going to work. We think that's very positive. And we would expect that our numbers for recruitment are go up. But in the end, it's really about retaining our employees. So we're working very diligently and trying to identify how we can do a better job of doing that. One of the things in listening to the meeting tonight is just, if you are modifying the way you're going to review your cases in the future, we would like to have something that you can put down in writing, so that if we do get some inquiries from the POA, if we get inquiries from our membership, we'll at least be able to explain to them what you're going to be doing forward, if not just temporarily, just something that we can be able to show them that you're actively still working cases, and that we're working together in making sure that those get resolved. So I'll let you talk amongst yourselves about that, but that's something that we would like to have if you can do it. And then lastly, because I know I'm taking some time here, is the responses to your recommendations. And I understand that there from you guys that there'll be some additional clarifying questions in regards to the answers or responses to our recommendations. So we'll look forward to those. That's all I have.
Okay, thanks. And I see there is a member of the public, former member of the commission, who has a question. Sheila, go ahead.
Great, thank you, Brendan. I'll be real brief. Chief, I was wondering, you mentioned over 200 officers that you had lost. Does that include retirements and officers going to other agencies? Thank you. Yes, it does.
Okay, okay,
Officers
thank you.
Okay, sure.
Okay.
All right, any questions from the commission? All right, not seeing any. Thanks, Chief, for your time. I don't think any commissioners have done ride-alongs, but if there's any report outs that anyone wants to give. I don't see any, so we'll move on. And then there's finally the commissioner announcements and or comments. I'm going to guess since everyone probably wants to have dinner, there probably aren't going to be many, but I want to give everyone an opportunity to ask any questions, make comments. All right, not seeing with that, we can adjourn. Oh, there we go. Bryza was going to start doing that. Yep, Robin, go ahead.
Yeah, I actually do want to comment on the police response to our recommendations and just say that as a commissioner that participated in formulating these police recommendations to SDPD, to say this response is inadequate and disappointing is an understatement. Our policy recommendations were based on observed patterns of behavior and careful review of best practices for other police departments. I can imagine the frustration of San Diegans who see this response tonight or who count on or hope at least the SDPD to operate in good faith with our police oversight body.
Thanks, Robin. And if that is it, we will go ahead and adjourn the meeting at 8:16. Thanks everyone for your time tonight. We'll see you later.